Greater Good Radio. Connect, learn, heal, and grow.
A guy named Clyde Conachero was good friends with former Governor Linda Lingle. And Governor Lingle wrote him a note and says, "You think Rick has any interest in becoming mayor?" So I was with him. He said, "Governor Lingle wants to know if you have any interest in running for mayor." To which I say to her, "No, I don't have an interest in running for mayor." Hadn't really thought about it. It sounded nice, but no. So he told her. So I saw Clyde like a week later or whatever. I said, "Just curious, did you ever get back to the governor?" Because we were both like Linda Lingle. And he said, "Yeah." I said, "What did she say?" He said, "I'll show you." He holds up his phone. She just said, "Shucks." She wrote one word, "Shucks." I tell Clyde on a whim, "I'll have dinner with. Let's talk about it." Okay. Go to Linda, and so she spends 3 hours in telling me why I owe it to Hawaii to run for mayor. Not only that, the dinner ends. She said, "I'm coming over tomorrow." She said, "I'm coming over to your house. We got to finish this." She came over and spent another 3 hours. So in the course of 24 hours, I had 6 hours of Linda. And she brought a guy who could be my campaign manager. She said, "Rick," she's telling me, because she was a 2-term mayor. It wasn't about good, but she was pitching me on what was hitting me with respect to what the city needed and deserved and should be, and you should do all this stuff. And that was late.
Yeah.
That was in December of 2019. It was really late. I mean, Amamiya was already running, and that was the catalyst. Yeah. And the other rumblings about who might run. And so I said, like, okay, I need some time to really mull this over and think about it. And I'll tell you, for a lot of reasons. First of all, the reality. I talk not a lot on this, but to myself maybe, about being intellectually honest. You have to be intellectually honest to yourself. And so now here I am at a crossroads at 73 with a wife saying, "Hey, you can just retire. You know, it's not about the money, and we can go do things." But I have to sit there and say, okay, if I decide to do this, do I have it in me? You know, I mean, first of all, I'm going to go from being involved with something that I know a lot about. Not that any 2 days were ever really the same. They never were on television. I think that was part of the seduction. But I knew the business pretty much. And no matter how crazy things got, pretty much knew my way around. It could help us get out of situations or create things or whatever. And suddenly I knew I'd have to go into something I knew nothing about.
Yeah.
You know? And that's sort of a real challenge, right? So anyway, I said, let me think about it. And I was thinking about my competitive juices were going. And I'm trying to tell myself, yeah, I can do this a little bit. And I already floated it by a couple of people. Told them I'm thinking about doing it. I got mixed reactions. I think I got a mixed reaction from Scott. I think he raised his eyebrow like, you know, I'm thinking about it. And so it was actually the day I made the final decision was on December 27th. And so this is going to sound corny, but I say it out of great respect and love for my mother. On December 27, 2019, my mother would have turned 100. But my mother died young. She died at 70. She had an accident. And my mother was the reason why I came to Hawaii. I wasn't going to come to Hawaii. I was in a prep school for the Naval Academy after high school to please my father. Realized that was a mistake. I had a full scholarship to go to Boston College, which is where I wanted to go out of high school until the Navy started recruiting me. And so, but my mother wanted to come to Hawaii, but not without me, the oldest son. My father had a chance to work at Pearl Harbor, Hawaii. But my mother was the dreamer in my family. So my mother is the youngest. I grew up in a tenement house. My mother had 5 sisters, 2 brothers. My mother used to say, you know, you're going to go to college someday. And I had all older cousins, and nobody was talking about going to college. They were talking about, you know, going to trade school, dropping out, joining the military. I mean, their horizons were sort of like that, you know, because all my uncles all fought World War II. And so that seemed to be like, you know, I'm going to either get a job, trade, start working earlier to help the family, or, I mean, that's where the bar was set. And that's kind of what happened, right? I mean, actually, as a kid, he lived in East Cambridge. I used to take a bus, a city bus, every day until I was 12 in the 7th grade when they moved. From the 1st grade to the 7th grade, I used to take a bus from East Cambridge to North Cambridge to go to school with a bunch of Irish kids, because my mother thought all the Italian kids in my neighborhood were going to be juvenile delinquents, and she didn't want me to be one. So it was like that, but I did that. And so I sat there on that day, knowing full well the reason why I came to Hawaii was because of my mom. And I thought, if my mother was alive today, if she was here and I asked her, what do you think I ought to do? Remember now, she died at 70. I'm already 73. She would say, you got to do this. You got to do it. She was that way. So I did it in that spirit. I made that decision thinking, I'm going to try this. If it works, But in the legacy of my parents, knowing who they were and how the whole thing about Hawaii came to be, and that spirit, I just felt the clock was ticking anyway. But I remember thinking that, and I made that decision.
If you resonate with Greater Good Radio, please join our community at www.greatergoodradio.com, where you can get access to exclusive content and offerings. Hope to see you soon.